Safe to Serve family, first-time viewers, welcome to this midday power surge, your spiritual oasis on this pilgrim journey. I'm your host, Andrew Henriquez, and today is Preparation Day. The biblical sixth day of the week is called Preparation Day. And by God's grace, as we consider, as we analyze these current events, it's our objective that we will be impressed, persuaded, to be found prepared, and by God's grace, getting others prepared. Now, today I do have a special guest, Marie Diaz from Eyes on the Times, and today we have a very solemn presentation. I want you all to listen attentively and to focus intently. Marie, welcome.
Thank you so much, Pastor, for having me. I'm looking forward to having this conversation.
So what are you focusing on right now?
Well, Pastor, it seems as if things are picking up speed, as the days go by. And what we're going to see today is that this administration is expanding the National Guard's reach, not just in the 19 previous states, but we're going to see that they're looking to send the National Guard to every state. Yes, you heard correctly, to all 50 states. And, that's quite an expansion. And we're going to get into that and see what the biblical implications are for us today.
Okay, before we dive into this, I want Safe to Serve International and first-time viewers to understand this point. There are going to be some current events that we shall roll out, analyze, but please don't miss the personal applications, the applications to get your family prepared. And there's going to be a theme that I'm going to address later on, and that is the United States of America is now looking like Jerusalem just before its destruction. Do you all need me to repeat that? Marie, take it away.
Yes. Just to add on to that, Pastor, as a watchman on the wall, I think it's important, regardless to what happens with these events, we are to awaken the people. And so let's get right into this. So let's take a look at this first headline. And the purpose of looking at this headline is so that we can see the progression that is taking place. So this first headline is coming from The Independent. It says Trump mobilizing up to 1,700 National Guard troops in 19 states to widen crime and immigration crackdown. So again, we just want you to understand that the reason that he was initially deploying the National Guard is so that we can focus on the increasing crime and as well as the immigration crisis. So now we're going to take a listen to a video clip in which they're going to discuss that. Let's take a listen to that.
Here it is.
Sources confirming to News Nation that 1,700 National Guard troops are being deployed across the country to help ICE with President Trump's crackdown on illegal immigrants in the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth authorizing the support through mid-November. The Pentagon telling News Nation that troops will be deployed to 19 states that you see here on the map.
Okay.
Yes. So, as you can see, based on that video clip, it's pretty straightforward. The deployment, based on what she just mentioned, was only supposed to be, or is only supposed to be, until mid-November. And of course, as I just previously mentioned, the purpose was because of the increasing crimes in said states and also to help with the immigration crisis. But as of Monday, we're going to see how things have taken a bit of a turn. And so we're going to take a look at a few headlines here. This first one is coming from Fox News. It says Pentagon drawing up quick reaction force of National Guard ready to quell, here it is, civil unrest at any moment. Let's look at the next headline. It says Trump orders major expansion of National Guard's role in law enforcement. An executive order released on Monday directs the creation of specialized guard units to quell civil disturbances in each state. Now, that's quite an expansion, as the headline denotes, from 19 states to all 50. And of course, when you read all of the articles and when you start listening to the videos, you realize that the only indication for this expansion is to quell civil unrest, as noted in the following article. And of course, I'm not going to read all of these articles. You can always go back, pause the video, and read it for yourself. But I just want you to see, emphasize there, again, it says all 50 states. Now, Pastor, it sounds like they are making preparation for something big. And I'm not suggesting that I know for certainty what they're preparing for. But, again, we're talking about civil unrest potentially in all 50 states. And could this be, what, say, for instance, Kevin Roberts had alluded to? He's mentioned it in several videos where he talked about another American Revolution or some other crisis that's going to take place. And bear in mind, too, that typically you don't start preparing for civil unrest unless there's some sort of indication.
Well, I do know that we ought not to speculate nor conjecture, but I believe that based on end-time prophecies, we can clearly see where this is tending. We can clearly see the end goal of this occupation of military presence in not only 19, but all 50 states. And as you progress, as you proceed, I'm going to drop those nuggets along the way. Marie.
Amen. And that's beautiful, that we have both the Bible and the spirit of prophecy to give us that light in those darkened places so that we can understand these prophetic events. And so now we're going to take a listen to a video clip where they're going to discuss this expansion. So let's take a listen to that.
Trump is expanding his powers when it comes to using the U.S. military on American soil for law enforcement. He signed a new executive order yesterday allowing the administration to create National Guard units, including a new rapid response force, to shut down what the White House calls civil disturbances.
And in Washington, most guardsmen are now armed as they help patrol the streets. The president had this response to those opposing his use of the military in American cities.
They say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator, he's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. I don't like a dictator. I'm not a dictator. I'm a man with great common sense and I'm a smart person.
It's interesting that he mentioned there, a dictator, and he went as far as to say that, some people say that they want a dictator. I don't know anyone in their right mind who would say that they want a dictator, but, we know that under the right or extreme circumstances, people are apt to cry out for the very thing that's designed to enslave them. Benjamin Franklin famously said that those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And for those individuals who, for the sake of reducing crime, in order to feel some sort of sense of peace and safety, are willing to have armed National Guardsmen, outside of their homes, it might seem logical. And I'm not sure, Pastor, if you want to chime in here, but
yes.
Yes,
I want to chime in.
Okay.
Not chime in. I want a trumpet tone in.
Amen. Amen.
Let's be very practical. Yes, Marie.
Yes. The only thing I want to say is that, this reminds me of the biblical account of Joseph, right? And of course, we saw that there was some sort of crisis and how for a morsel of meat, for bread, they were willing to give up their bodily autonomy. And could it be that the right crisis is going to bring us or drive people to the point where they're going to cry out for their own enslavement?
So let's connect two dots here. So we have armed National Guard on the streets in not only 19, but it's going to be all 50 states. Armed National Guards on the streets of the United States of America. That's number one. Number two, what is the reason? Increasing crime. Number three, we're going to do this just in 30 days. Is that so? Here's my application. Number one, based on end-time prophecies, is crime going to decrease or is crime going to increase?
Increase.
Just let that sink in for a minute. So since this is his response to address increasing crime, National Armed Guards, and crimes are not going to decrease, but increase based on end-time prophecies, could it be that we are going to see armed National Guards on the streets of America, not only for 30 days, but for the next 3.5 years. And if time permits, the second coming of Christ does not become a reality, if the next election, peradventure, a Republican wins, this continues for the next 4 years. Let that sink in. And number 3, he said just for 30 days, which we will address later on. Only 30 days. That sounds familiar. Did they not say the same thing during the pandemic? Give us 6 weeks and we'll bring this pandemic, this pestilence 19 under control, and then it's going to be business as usual. You may return to your regular duties. Is that so? 6 weeks became 3.5 literal years. Let that sink in. So friends, I'm telling you, we're now seeing the platform being laid for a police state in America in all 50 states. I know. Here come the cynics and the mockers. Pastor, since crimes are increasing, what is Trump supposed to do? Now, we aren't here to argue that and debate that. What we're saying to you is this constitutional or unconstitutional? Number 1. Number 2, what is the end goal? Based on end time prophecy, that's where I want to focus. And lastly, and I bring you back in, Marie, we know this is the Hegelian dialectic at work, because there are policies that created what Trump is now doing. You see, there are policies that allowed crimes to become rampant in the major cities of the U.S. That was all orchestrated. That was all intentional. So here comes the response. And the response is going to be such that will make America a police state. Marie, take it away.
You know, Pastor, it's the classic problem, reaction, solution, and the other thing I want to point out about this, which you addressed, is the fact that they are armed National Guardsmen. That's a new development, a nuance there, and most people may not realize it, but the National Guard is supposed to be there to assist law enforcement. They're deployed for natural disasters, and yes, they are there to quell unrest and things of that nature. But if you Google it, you'll see that when they were first deployed, they weren't given weaponry. It wasn't until later or after the fact. And so again, we want to keep all of these things in mind as we're moving forward. So now we want to take a look at what the critics are saying with regards to these developments. So let's take a look at a couple more headlines. It says Trump plans to create guard units to quell civil unrest, alarms experts. Critics called Trump's desire to build a kind of rapid reaction force for civil unrest alarming, insisting his order pushes legal boundaries for the National Guard. The administration is trying, get it, to desensitize the American people to get used to American armed soldiers in combat vehicles patrolling the streets of America. Trump wants guard units whose purpose is to, quite frankly, dominate and police the American people. And that is extremely disturbing. And those are some pretty startling statements that we're finding in these articles. And I'm obliged to agree with them, especially when you look at the totality of what is being done in conjunction with what we are being told in Bible prophecy, especially since there are no indications, as I said, of civil unrest presently. So, Pastor, it would be different if if we were in the midst of civil unrest and he's, making efforts and plans to deploy, the National Guard to all 50 states. But this is being done preemptively in anticipation of civil unrest.
Marie, continue.
Yes. And so now we're about to show a clip, and I have to admit that when I was doing my research, I hesitated placing this clip in this presentation. And the reason being is because the individual that is making these remarks. Now, Bill Maher, he is very vulgar. He's this crude individual, and I disagree with almost everything that he has to say. But this video happened to come across my feed. And like I said, when I was doing my research and I listened to what he said, said, I realized that he had some very valid points. And just remember that, sometimes the media talking heads, they're being used, to promote predictive programming. And so I want you to take a listen to what he has to say, and then we're going to discuss those points thereafter. Let's take a listen.
If there was a slow-moving coup, let me just describe some of the steps, and you tell me if I'm being paranoid. First, create a masked police force. Get people used to looking at that. Normalize snatching people off the street. Get them used to that. Normalize seeing the National Guard and the military on the street. Then start talking about crime in the capital, which is basically, has always been a fairly crime-ridden city. This is our nation's capital where elections are decided. And then because the crime is so bad, have other states start sending their troops, not just the National Guard there in D.C., but now at least 6 other states are sending their troops, which then Trump can then federalize. So you're having many states' troops on the ground there, and now they're under federal control. So you have in the Capitol a sort of permanent police presence.
Marie.
That is something, right? And so you see that, and the point that I really want to draw from his clip is the fact that they're trying to normalize having armed National Guardsmen in the streets of America. And that's exactly what the previous article just mentioned. And this also reminds me of Luke chapter 21, verse 20. Pastor, you alluded to that in your intro, right? Where it talks about how Jerusalem is going to be compassed with armies, and that it was an indication that the desolation thereof is nigh. And so again, I don't know if this is the final event, but I'm just saying these things remind me of birth pangs. And as a mother of 4 beautiful children, I know very well that before the main event, before the birth of a child, there are events that take place that feel very much like the final event. And so if anything, this should be an indication that we need to hasten our footsteps and get prepared because the movement is on foot.
I'm going to be emphasizing that point and reiterating it shortly based on Luke 21. And of course, we aren't for either parties, donkey or elephant, because both parties, with their policies, are driving us to the mark of the beast crisis. And as you rightfully said, if we look at Luke 21, when you shall see Jerusalem surrounded with armies, surrounded, compassed, know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Everybody put an emphasis as I underscore the word compassed, which means to surround. Don't forget that. Marie, continue. You watch this today. Marie.
So we're going to continue looking at this article. It says, without a plan to return policing to power, without a plan to return policing power to local civilian authorities, I think we are setting precedents we can't come back from. It says the National Guard already has quick reaction forces in every state that are able to respond quickly in times of crisis. Manner said Trump appears to be calling for something different. That's key. Trump appears to want units that specialize in quelling civil unrest, much as other units might specialize in intelligence or armor. That they're going to be there to police Americans. And again, I just want to reiterate the point that he says that without a plan to return policing power to the local civilian authorities, I think that we are setting precedents we can't come back from. So again, Pastor, this goes back to what you originally said, how this may be the beginning of a progression. And now in the following clip, lest you think that this is just the author's opinion, President Trump is going to confirm that they plan to extend the time in which the National Guard is going to be present in U.S. cities. And what you're going to see is that the Guard is only supposed to be present for a maximum or a limit of 30 days. And unless the president gets congressional approval, they have to, the troops have to return. But you're going to see what he's going to say in the following clip. So let's take a listen to that.
Here it is.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your federalization of the police has a 30-day limit unless Congress acts to extend it. Are you talking to Congress about extending it, or do you believe 30 days is sufficient?
Well, if it's a national emergency, we can do it without Congress, but we expect to be to Congress before Congress very quickly. And again, we think the Democrats will not do anything to stop crime, but we think the Republicans will do it almost unanimously. So we're going to need a crime bill that we're going to be putting in, and it's going to pertain initially to D.C. We're going to use it as a very positive example. And we're going to be asking for extensions on that, long-term extensions, because you can't have 30 days. 30 days that's by the time you do it. We're going to have this in good shape. And don't forget, in the border.
Marie.
Now, I just want to mention that this clip predates what took place on Monday. And so he was speaking just about what was happening in D.C. But now we have this new development where he's sending the National Guard across the United States, and he's telling you in advance that we're going to need more time than the 30 days. I also just hope that your audience caught the fact that he says that in a national emergency, he says that we can do it without Congress. Now, of course, he backtracks a little bit, and he says that, that we plan to petition, Congress for congressional approval. But I just want you to note that. And so could it be that there's a national crisis that is underway? And again, he said he used the term long-term extension. So, Pastor, regardless to how you slice it, they plan to have guardsmen on the streets for an extended period of time.
And that means civil unrest is coming for all states.
And
what he's now rolling out, he's telling you, if there is a national emergency, right now, is there a national emergency in all 50 states? Something is brewing. And I want to say this before you continue, Marie. I was actually watching a clip on yesterday, and this older guy, he passed recently, and they were giving him his flowers on social media. And there's one clip that caught my attention. He said, normally, when you have parents who want their children, young children, to not bother them, they say, Johnny, go outside and play ball. Whatever ball. Football, soccer, basketball, volley, just go play ball. So we can be free of your bothersome attitude and focus on what we must focus on. And this man drew a potent application that right now in society, the media, the tyrants, they want us to just focus on playing ball, focus on sports, soccer, football, basketball, all of that, golf, all of that, tennis. Focus on those, just go play ball while Rome burns. Just go play ball while we surveil all of you. Just go play ball while we strip away your liberties. Go and play ball while we take away your freedoms. Go and play ball while we lay the foundation for the mark of the beast crisis. And by the time it's halftime as you're playing ball, or it's full time and you come back inside, now you're realizing what's happening. It's too late. Just go play ball. And Marie, the majority of SDAs, the majority of the people in the world have no relish for presentations like this. But if we were talking about tennis and golf and basketball and football and soccer or track and field, they would be focused, attentive, speak about R&B and the hip hop culture and Hollywood, they are laser focused. But you speak about the real issues, current events fulfilling end time prophecies. We're busy. We'll come back to it next time, later on, and they never do. And when this crisis hits and they are awakened, for the majority, it's going to be too late. Marie, take it away.
And Pastor, that's not a recent phenomenon. It's referred to as bread and circuses. They have been doing this for centuries, where they have the populace preoccupied, as you stated, with things that, are of little consequence. And as you rightly stated, when the crisis, when the trap has been set, unfortunately, it is then that many people are going to wake up, unfortunately, like the foolish virgins. But thank God for Midday Power Surge, where we can learn these things and we can put, time in.
And one more thing, when they are focused on these bread and circus news reports, sports, Hollywood, the movie industry, what happens is their mental reasoning shrinks. So when you present current events fulfilling end-time prophecies, they can't focus. They no longer have the power to critically think through things and make reasonable, biblical, spiritual decisions, because their brain power has been weakened, sapped by non-essentials. Marie, take it away.
Not to belabor the point, but I think about, the servant who said, "My Lord delayeth his coming," and he begins to smite those, who are proclaiming the message. And this is why we have to be fearless when we're proclaiming this message. God has called us for such a time as this. So we're just going to continue here in this article. It says, having soldiers police protests as this order envisions threatens fundamental liberties and public safety, and it violates centuries-old principles against involving the military in domestic law enforcement. Donald Trump wants to use the military to occupy the U.S. cities. It says, if this were happening in any other country, we would have no trouble calling it what it is, a dangerous power grab. So clearly, based on these articles, something is underway. And the only thing that we know for certainty, again, is what the Bible has told us was going to happen. And, of course, when you look at the Bible and the spirit of prophecy, we're told that one of the elements that is going to precipitate or happen before we see civil unrest is the centralizing of wealth. And of course, the Bible tells us in Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 and 17, that there's only going to be two classes, and that's going to be the rich and the poor. Now, I want you to take a listen to what the spirit of prophecy has to say with regards to civil unrest. And this is coming from the book Education, page 228, paragraph 2. She says, at the same time, anarchy is seeking to sweep away all law, not only divine, but human. The centralizing of wealth and power, the vast combinations for the enriching of the few at the expense of the many, the combinations of the poorer classes for the defense of their interests and claims, the spirit of unrest. And this is what we're talking about, right? Of riot and of bloodshed, the worldwide dissemination of the same teachings that led to the French Revolution, all are tending to involve the whole world in a struggle similar to that which convulsed France. And so you can see clearly that it is the centralizing of wealth, the gathering up, this transfer of wealth that's going to lead to the spirit of unrest. Now here,
wealth and power.
Yes, correct. And here's another quotation from Sister White, and this is coming from Manuscript Releases, Volume 5. She says, in India and China and Russia, and again, the cities of America. It's interesting she didn't say the countries, right? The cities of America, thousands of men and women are dying of starvation. The moneyed men, because they have the power, control the market. They purchase at low rates all they can obtain and then sell at greatly increased prices. Isn't that exactly what we see with the inflation and the cost of living? And now listen to what she says is going to be the inevitable result. She says this means starvation for the poorer classes and will, not maybe, not potentially, she says, and will result in a civil war. And then, of course, she says there will be a time of trouble such as never was. And so, Pastor, you can clearly see that there's going to be a financial crisis, and this deepening divide between the rich and the poor will eventually ignite this civil unrest.
Marie, if I interject right now and insert, I may take you off that point. Your last point was a coming financial crisis. And could it be that the powers that be understand what is coming? And if there is to be a great financial meltdown, that the common people are going to rise up. There'll be civil unrest. There'll be riots. There'll be bloodshed. So now, to not be proactive, be reactive, but proactive, let's start using a so-called emergency to now install National Guards who are armed on U.S. streets. Marie, I don't want to break that trend of thought. Continue.
And it's interesting because you would think that we are the only ones that are thinking along these lines. But I am so grateful that, to see Catherine Austin Fitts, she's thinking along the same lines. I don't know, Pastor, we might have to try to reach out to her somehow or another again to see if we can get her on the platform, because she clearly can see what's happening. And what she's about to state in this following video goes along with Bible and the spirit of prophecy. And so I want you to take a listen to what she has to say and what she sees on the horizon based on what's currently taking place. Let's take a listen to that clip.
Here it is.
It's too bad the Doge effort wasn't sincere. Maybe someday it will be, but it's too bad it wasn't sincere because, between the cuts and what they're doing with tariffs, it's not enough. It's not working. So if you're afraid of what's going to happen if you institute major cuts, especially with entitlement, you want physical control. You want the army on the ground. So to me, my question, and I don't know the answer, is the deploying of the National Guard and the military in anticipation of what's going to happen in the budget.
That's interesting. Or what's going to happen on the streets, or what's going to happen in the wake of a big crash and subsequent bailouts of the usual suspects.
Right, because as we said a couple of weeks ago, if you think bailing out banks is bad, wait do you see what happens when you bail out billionaires?
So if you thought that Occupy Wall Street was something, you haven't seen anything yet. And again, people, they have no money. And what she said is clear, Pastor. And again, I'm hoping that by now your audience has gotten to the point where you have to look at the entire picture, right? These are not just isolated events. When I do research, Pastor, sometimes I may not see the clear connection, but I file these things away in my mind. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. What's that all about? And I kind of just, file it away. And then eventually something else will happen and you'll see the connection and it gives depth to what you're saying, right? And so again, going back to my original thought, when you're looking at the entire picture, she just talked about how there could potentially be a financial crisis or a crash, right? Now, isn't that interesting timing that he's deploying the National Guard of what could potentially be this financial crisis when just a month or two ago, he began introducing things to transition us from our current economic system? That cannot just be a coincidence. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that we have to understand and look at the entire picture. So again, to make it clear for those who may not know what I'm talking about, President Trump just recently passed the Big Beautiful Bill. And a part of that, he also introduced the Genius Act, which includes the Stablecoin Act, which is to transition us from our current system to a digital system, right? But in addition to that, you got to also remember that the European Union at the same time is transitioning to CBDCs. And so you have these major countries, Western countries, who are now transitioning to a digital system. And a part of transitioning, right, is collapsing the old system and introducing this new system. And so again, Pastor, what Catherine Fitts is saying is exactly what's going to happen. President Trump is anticipating what he can foresee is going to happen. And so to mitigate that, to make sure that he has everything under control, he's deploying troops on the street.
Continue.
Okay. Now, I'm reminded of something that was said in the book Maranatha, page 180, paragraph 5. Sister White says, ere long, or in the very near future, there will be such strife, or we can say unrest and confusion in the cities that those who wish to leave them will not be able. And again, I can't confirm emphatically that this is it, but I can tell you it's along the lines, right? And again, we're told that there are several things that have to take place before the mark of the beast crisis or during the mark of the beast crisis, right? This financial crisis, civil unrest. We know that there's a national Sunday law and then the time of trouble. And it will happen sooner or later. And as watchmen on the wall, again, we're called to awaken people to what is supposed to happen. I'm going to refer back to what Jesus says in Luke 19, verse 42 through 44. She said, if thou hadst known, even thou in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace, she says, but now they are hid from thine eyes. And of course, when I think about that, I think about Revelations chapter 3, right? The Laodiceans, how they are blind and they know it not. Can you imagine you're seeing all of these things happening, literally troops on the street, and you can't put two and two together based on the things that you have seen. The Bible goes on to say, it says, for the day shall come upon thee that thy enemy shall cast a trench about thee and compass thee round and keep thee in on every side. Why? Because thou knowest not the time of thy visitation. You know, for those who see these things, you know, some people think that the things that the Bible prophesies is going to take place in the distant future. You know, there's no way that these things could possibly happen right now. And I just can't imagine being brought into slavery and not knowing it. But then again, you think about this whole idea of the frog in the kettle. Things are being done so stealth at such incremental and like steps that you can't even perceive it if you're not paying attention, or better yet, if God doesn't give you the heavenly eyesight, you're going to totally miss it. You know, and I know I'm talking a lot, so I'm going to let you in. But the one thing I want to say is that it boggles my mind that people don't realize that people in Germany didn't just wake up in the Third Reich. You know, you didn't just wake up one day and there it is. And they had, you know, things to persecute and get rid of people. It happened slowly, but I don't know if it was because they chose to be ignorant, willful ignorance, or if it's because they literally were blind. But Lord, help us to be able to see what's happening.
It's evident the burden is on your heart to see souls prepared, to see souls ready for these last days, and that they may understand the signs of the last days. I'm here giving a smirk, a smile, because the scriptures you were quoting are the ones I'm going to get to shortly. But continue, because I want to add this. That statement you referenced from Maranatha, it's on the screen from Country Living, page 11, that ere long, there'll be such what? Strife and confusion. Does that sound like increasing crimes? We'll get to that. That those who wish to leave them would not be able. We must be preparing for these issues. Everybody, step back for a minute. I want you all to consider what was just shared for the past 36 minutes. All right? Imagine in the city where you reside, let's say it's New York, Manhattan, the 5 boroughs. Let's say it's Orlando, it's Miami, it's Memphis, Tennessee, it's Atlanta, Georgia. Give me some cities, major ones where crimes are prevalent. Houston, Texas. All right, where? Detroit, Chicago, etc., 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 etc. Imagine when you realize the mark of the beast has now been enforced, and now you begin to recollect what we have been telling you on Midday Power Surge for the past several years, from the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy, and now it rings. Oh, I must now leave the cities. Imagine if you take a peep outside your window. Who will you see at the front door or on the street right there at some corner? Armed military presence. And if you try to leave at that time, what will they tell you? Get back inside. It's a curfew. Martial law. Back into your residence, ma'am and sir. You see my point? You can't leave. It's a police state. How will you leave? Forget about checkpoints. As we saw in the pandemic, they had military police checkpoints between states. For example, if you're driving on I-95 heading north, as soon as you got to New York or New Jersey, checkpoint. They're looking at license plates. Are you coming from a state that was more lax with policies to combat the pestilence? If so, fill out these paperwork. If so, log into this app. Give us your information. It was police checkpoints, military checkpoints. Forget about that. That's miles from your home. Imagine military armed National Guards at your front door. Imagine that. Imagine if you reside in a high-rise building. High-rise building. 3 floors, 5 floors. How do you get out? How do you get out? Think about that. And all they need is the right crisis and shut everything down. Oh, I can hear it now. Oh, that would never happen. Oh yeah? If you were told this would happen March 11, 2020, because there was going to be a pestilence, a virus, you would have said, shut up, you're crying wolf. Nonsense. But what happened? They shut the whole world down. You could not leave your homes. It's coming. So you have a choice. You can go play ball and focus on Hollywood while your liberties are being restricted and while you are being groomed to be found unprepared. The decision is yours on this preparation day. Marie.
You know, Pastor, as you're talking, there are so many thoughts that are going through my mind, but something really interesting just dropped into my mind. You know, Sister White prophesied that every principle of the Constitution will be repudiated, right? Look at this. Now, we know that the Constitution says that we're not allowed to have standing military in the United States. It's called posse comitatus, if I'm not mistaken, right? But look at how they circumvented the Constitution, right? They're not calling the U.S. military. They brought in the National Guard, which is right, and they're armed, right? And they put them in, and they're allowed to be in the United States. You know, sometimes it saddens me. You know, I was just speaking to the gentleman earlier, and I was just saying sometimes I feel like because we're in present truth, a lot of times we're exposed to these things and we understand them. And we may, to a degree, become desensitized. Imagine, you know, like Noah, he preached for 120 years. Just imagine someone telling you the same message for 120 years. And I believe that some of those people may have just, maybe initially when they first saw the signs or were hearing things, you know, they were impressed, but somehow or another, it just became, you know, just another day, just another midday power surge, just another message. So much so that they missed it, right? So that when the signs actually took place, when they saw the skies darken with the birds flying into the ark, when they saw ravenous animals next to the sheep and the lions, they couldn't even get it. It didn't resonate with them. They hardened their hearts. And so I'm saying all of this to say, because we're about to look at a clip. What is it going to take? Pastor, you just said literally having armed soldiers outside of your homes. What are you going to do? What are we waiting for? And so I included this clip so that you can see what people in Washington, D.C. are having to deal with right now. They're going to work. They're going to the mall, to the grocery store, and there's armored vehicles. There's troops on the street. What are we waiting for, brothers and sisters? Like, I don't know, Pastor, but let's play.
All in the name of two things: combating illegal immigration, right? And increasing crimes. But wait a minute. Weren't there policies that brought in both crises?
Correct.
I mean, we're seeing it now. So he is reacting. Marie, take it away.
And not just that, Pastor. Remember, this machinery that they've developed, you know, once they get rid of, or they're done getting rid of the immigration crisis, they can redirect that same machinery to go after whomever. And we know ultimately, based on Bible prophecy, it's going to be us. It's those who are true to God's laws, right? So when you see people being snatched off of the street, one day that's going to be your brother or your sister, when you see the detention centers that are being filled up with, these illegal migrants or whomever, eventually that's going to be filled with Bible believing individuals. Brothers and sisters, it's here. It's here. So let's take a look at this clip so that we can see what life is going to be like in each and every city.
Before you roll the clip, I just received a text message saying, Pastor, if you have time, open the phone lines. If you have time, open the phone lines. All right, Marie, go ahead.
Yes, we're just going to play that clip so that we can see what's coming to a city near you.
No. Not only a city near you, but the corner of that city block. Picture New York. All they have to do is stage the armed National Guards at each corner. So that means you cover each block. I lived in New York. I know what that looks like. Listen, watch this.
It's been 2 weeks since the National Guard's been deployed to Washington, D.C., and now they're allowed to carry weapons. Come with me to see what it looks like.
Mercy. Marie.
Yes. All I can say, Pastor, is when ye shall see Jerusalem, see, it's literal. When ye shall see Jerusalem surrounded. And isn't it interesting? I believe you just recently did a midday power surge where even the military is being conditioned to believe that they're going to be fighting from a religious perspective. I mean, on every side, you're seeing what's happening. It's here, brothers and sisters. That's it, Pastor.
It's my time?
Yes, sir.
Oh, they're in trouble now. Marie, I want to pick it up right here. When you shall see Jerusalem surrounded, when I hear and read the word surround, compass, which I'll get to shortly, Marie, I'm thinking about military forces on the outside. But remember this. Hold on. I'll get there shortly. Beloved, on the screen right now is a statement from the book Ministry of Healing. Just give me 5 minutes. Let me crunch this. In the book Ministry of Healing, page 183, just to summarize this one paragraph, it says the rulers, the lawmakers in America, the educators in America, statesmen who comprehend the causes that underlie the present state of society, those who hold the reins of government are unable to solve the problem of poverty, pauperism, and increasing crime. They are struggling in vain, merciful Father. Let that sink in. And why has the president begun to do what he's doing? I'm not going to repeat what we have been saying for the last 47 minutes. Is to combat increasing crime. Inspiration says they will be struggling in vain. They can't stop it. And if this is the response, increasing crime is going to get worse. So expect a police state. Let that sink in. In that same paragraph, inspiration says, when you see this, remember, it's time for country living. The 5 keys of survival. Beloved, you watch what's coming next. Okay. Now, Marie, you intimated who is next. Because once these 2 crises, or the migrant crisis, becomes abated, all they have to do is just pivot and just fabricate some other crisis to keep the police state intact. Do you know who is next on the agenda? I don't know if it's second in line or third in line, but one thing I do know, it's God's 7th-day Sabbath-keeping people who are next in line. That's the book, Great Controversy, page 592. Just read the first sentence. We are going to be blamed as enemies of law and order. That we are the ones causing anarchy and corruption in society. So imagine a police state turned against Seventh-day Sabbath keeping people, if we have not yet implemented the 5 keys of survival, and key number 2, we are stuck in the cities, how are we going to escape? Beloved, unless you plan as a Sabbath keeper who has rejected God's 5 keys of survival, unless you plan to grow wings in the city and fly away, you're in trouble. And by the way, if you grow wings, they have drones. Amen. They have drones. It's time to implement the 5 keys of survival. The last time I read, most of the action is not going to be in the rural districts, but where? In the cities. Not in some mountain areas, desert. No, there's not time for that. It's in the cities. Okay. Marie, they're in trouble now. Let me come to your point. In Luke 21, give me 3 more minutes. In Luke 21, verse 20 through verse 23, these were the words Marie has been quoting from Scripture. When you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, know the desolation thereof is near. If you're in the city, move to the country. These be the days of vengeance. Stop it right there. When I read compass, I think about something on the outside. You who are within can't leave, and those who are without cannot come in. Compass, surrounded. Watch this. That was in the year AD 66 through AD 70. But before that time period, at the first advent of Christ, between 27 AD and 31 AD, there were armies stationed on the streets of Jerusalem. Hear me. When I say to you, the United States of America is now looking like Jerusalem before its destruction. What happened in Jerusalem? Jerusalem had a police state. Just before the close of probation and just before Cestius and Titus came. Watch this. Beloved, this is the book, The Desire of Ages, page 132. It says, when John the Baptist was preaching and he was drawing crowds, it says, the danger of insurrection caused every popular gathering to be looked upon with suspicion by the Romans. Look at this next sentence. Christ gave the disciples a sign when Jerusalem would be destroyed. It says in the last 2 sentences, when you see this surrounding of Jerusalem with armies, it says, flee to the countries. Not one Christian perished because they saw the sign and they fled. Next sentence. Watch carefully now. Page 576. If Jerusalem had known what it was her privilege to know, and had heeded the light which heaven had sent her on midday power surge, last sentence, there would have been no armed soldiers standing at her gates. So notice, there were armed soldiers on the streets. Any gathering, let's shut that down. John the Baptist drew crowds. Christ drew crowds. Let's shut that down. What is that? An insurrection against the government? They had armed soldiers on the grounds. And that preceded Jerusalem being compassed. You can leave, you can enter. That's the mark of the beast time period. Next quotation, lest you think it's 1 or 2. Page 577. Christ came to save Jerusalem with her children. You may read the rest. But the leaders of the nation were in apostasy and blind. Second sentence. Third one. Christ saw Jerusalem compassed with armies, besieged inhabitants, driven to starvation and death, mothers feeding upon the dead bodies of their own children. Because they were unprepared. Next preacher, hear what it says now. Christ, the last week of his earthly ministry, when he was entering Jerusalem, it's called the triumphal entry. The last Sunday to the last Friday, last week, he's on the donkey, riding into Jerusalem. Look what this sentence says now. Red words. The multitude were convinced that the hour of their emancipation was at hand. In imagination, they saw the Roman armies driven from Jerusalem. So where were the armies? Before AD 70, where were they? In and on the streets of Jerusalem. The United States of America is now looking, apparently, like Jerusalem before its destruction at the first advent of Christ. Armed soldiers. And then came AD 70. That person who sent me the text, if you want, you may call in right now, 689-777-5198. 689-777-5198. You asked, Marie, any closing words? Well, it's here. Caller, you're live on Safe to Serve. What's the feedback?
God bless you, Pastor. You guys are doing a fantastic job. Listen to me. Marie Diaz, you're on point. What we're missing, Pastor, you're always telling people it's time to move to the country, flee to the country. There's going to be a time where we won't be able to no longer tell people, you move to the country. You won't have that option. And then when you look at Jerusalem, when it was surrounded and you had troops in the street, even to go to work, you had to show papers to leave your house, to show the job that you're going to. Our people are not comprehending what is really going to happen in the cities and what is happening now right before their very eyes. I got a call yesterday from Romania, and she said, I saw you on Save to Serve, Pastor. And she says, in Romania, they're telling me to get out of their way, get out of their face. She's hearing this from the Seventh-day Adventist. She said, I sold my house for X amount of dollars. I'm 65 years old. I went to find a place in the country to be secure with even some SDA people, and they're saying, listen, you're better off praying to your God to take your life rather than coming with us. Some of our Seventh-day Adventist people are even falling away. Times are getting rough. It's short. It's hard. You're better off struggling in the country than living what you think is free in the city. Our people need to be proactive now. We're doing everything we can to get to the city. And one more thing real quick. They'll say all the time that Midday Power Surge is always talking about move to the city, and not prepping people. Move to the country and not prepping people. And I had to explain that Midday Power Surge goes above and beyond with the practicalities of how to get out of the city and what to do to get out of the city, is that our people simply aren't listening. So what you see, Marie Diaz, what you're bringing to the table is so spot on that it's unbelievable. So I thank you and commend you for that. But our people need to get up today and get moving, Pastor. Thank you again.
Thank you. Marie, 1 minute, closing words.
Yes. I just want to speak to those who desire to leave, but don't have the financial means, don't see a way out. God knows. He understands. You just have to be mentally, spiritually ready to flee. God will take care of you. This presentation is for those who know that they need to go and they choose not to. And so, brothers and sisters, it's time to get ready.
Christ beheld the city and wept. Luke 19. He wept because he realized that people were blind and knew not the time of their visitation. It's my prayer that based on what we covered, the people now know the time of their visitation. Father in heaven, we're thankful today for what was presented. I pray that this will cause people to examine themselves, set their homes, their lives, their family in order, because that which shall come will come. And the impending crisis will no longer be delayed. This movement can usher us into the mark of the beast crisis. We don't know. Could be. It may be reversed. Since we don't know, let's all be found prepared. Lord, give us a great desire to implement these 5 keys of survival so we may be found faithful as faithful servants in thy sight. Keep us faithful and prepare all of us for your coming Sabbath when the sun sets, is our prayer in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
Maranatha.